Well, land use conflicts are often present in residential and commercial areas. However, they also occur in our rural communities. An important issue in agriculture is the possibility that farm activity could be deemed as a nuisance. Now, if that happens, the activity would then be stopped by a court. Well, Roger McEowen with the Washburn University School of Law joins us now for a further look at ag nuisances. And Roger, certainly is a timely issue that we hear about in the headlines quite often in agriculture. What exactly is considered an ag nuisance?
Well, a nuisance is simply an unreasonable interference with someone else's use and enjoyment of their property. It's as simple as that. Whatever I'm doing, as long as it's not just, if it's more than trivial, but if it unreasonably interferes with somebody else's right to use and enjoy their property, that's the classic definition of what a nuisance is.
And are a nuisance and negligence, are those in the same category?
No, and that's the key thing that confuses a lot of people. For instance, I can be operating my farm properly. I could have all of my permits that I'm required to have from the state or the federal government, and I could still be sued successfully on a nuisance theory. Again, it comes back to whether what I'm doing on my property unreasonably interferes with someone else's use and enjoyment of their property, and that really has nothing to do with negligence.
And what are the next steps if a nuisance does actually exist?
Well, I think we should always try to work things out with our neighbors before we get lawyers and government officials involved. But if that approach doesn't work, and there are real discernible damages, then a lawsuit can be brought. And the courts have wide latitude to fashion a remedy to fit the situation. That could be monetary damages. It could be a permanent injunction, a temporary injunction. In other words, stop what you're doing. And it could be something where the court specifies where a farmer surface applies manure. Don't put it in this field that's near this person's house. Do it this time of the year. Incorporate it by knifing it in immediately as soon as you spread it, and so forth. They could even order, as the Arizona Supreme Court did about 50 years ago, order the complaining party to pay the party that has been deemed to be a nuisance to move elsewhere. And that's a pretty famous case that happened with respect to a cattle feedlot about 35 miles northwest of downtown Phoenix 50 years ago.
Now, how can right to farm laws play a role in all of this?
Well, they can actually be invaluable. Every state has a right to farm law. And basically, that's a law that says, look, for established farms that have been here for a certain amount of time, usually at least a year, it's just not fair to have somebody be able to come out, buy an acreage out in the country next to that farm, and then all of a sudden complain, oh, it's noisy, there are tractor noise at nights, there's dust, there's odors from livestock, and so forth. But every state law is different, so you have to know the specifics of your state law. But those right to farm laws can be invaluable.
Roger, what would you say is the big takeaway here, especially as more folks move out to our rural communities?
Yeah, that's a real good question. I think, you've heard it said that good fences make good neighbors. Well, I think good communication also can help us minimize conflicts with neighbors, and that builds trust. And it's a greater chance that you're going to have a neighbor that won't drag you into court. You're going to be able to work things out, or they won't complain if they understand how you produce food and fiber for them and for everybody else. So we want to try that approach first before we go to the legal system.
All right. Well, Roger, as always, thank you very much for your insight today. Roger McEowen, he's with Washburn School of Law, connecting with us here this morning. You can go online to washburnlaw.edu/WALTR for more information. Again, thank you, Roger.